My name is Caleb Huxley. I'm a single dad, and for the last 3 years, I've been raising my daughter, Lila, on my own in Madison, Wisconsin. She's 12. Reads 3 grade levels above average. Hates gym class. Thinks Medusa got a raw deal in Greek mythology. And still hugs me every morning before school like she's 6 again. She's the one thing in this life I've gotten right. It started like any regular Tuesday. Cloudy. Late October. The kind of gray that sits heavy on your shoulders. I left work early, stopped by a vending machine in the teacher's lounge for a coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard, and sat down in one of those 2 small chairs in room 204, the math room. That's where I met Mr. Yarrow. Gray blazer, pressed slacks, a watch that looked more expensive than my mortgage. His expression didn't move when I walked in. No smile. No handshake. Just a nod. Like this was going to be clinical. Quick. Cold. "Mr. Huxley," he said. "We need to talk about Lila." I set the coffee down and leaned forward. "What's going on?" He opened a leather folder. Slid 3 sheets of paper across the desk, each with a school district header and Lila's name stamped at the top. 3 incident reports. All signed by him. All from the last 12 days. The first one said she was willfully disruptive during instruction. The second, defiant after being corrected for unrelated drawing during lecture. The third was a plagiarism accusation. A math test. He said Lila's answers were too advanced to be her own. I read it twice. My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. My brain couldn't process the words fast enough. Lila. Who double-checks her answers? Who asks me to proofread her science notes? Who cried once because she missed a homework deadline by 10 minutes? I looked up. "Did you talk to her?" Before writing any of this. He didn't flinch. "There's a process, Mr. Huxley." I followed it. My voice dropped an octave. Quiet. Controlled. She's 12. And 12-year-olds need boundaries. He said it like it was final. Like this whole conversation was just a formality before he buried her in a stack of paperwork and referrals. I stared at him for a full 5 seconds before standing up. "Thank you for your time." He blinked, confused. "Mr. Huxley, don't you want to?" But I was already walking out the door. Outside, the hall was buzzing. Parents standing in clusters. Kids tapping lockers. A janitor dragging a mop bucket that squeaked every few feet. Normal life. But I couldn't hear any of it over the sound of blood rushing in my ears. Because something wasn't right. This wasn't just a strict teacher or a bad grade. This was targeted. Precise. Like someone had drawn a bullseye on my daughter's back and started firing arrows. And I wasn't going to let it go. Not this time. Not with Lila. Not when she was the only family I had left. Lila didn't say much in the car. She stared out the passenger window, watching the wind drag brown leaves across the sidewalk. Her backpack was clutched tight to her chest like a shield. I didn't ask her about the reports right away. I didn't want her to feel cornered. Instead, I asked how lunch was. What book she picked from the library. Whether that girl, Morgan, the one who draws dragons on her arms, was still being weird about sitting too close. She gave me clipped answers. Soft nods. One-word replies. But she didn't look at me. Not once. At the next red light, I finally asked, "Lila, can I ask you something?" She didn't move. "Did something happen in math class?" A long pause. Then, almost in a whisper, "I don't like him, Daddy." "Mr. Yarrow?" She nodded. Slowly. He calls on me when he knows I don't know. Then he says things like, "Maybe next time you'll actually pay attention." Another pause. Once he made me read my wrong answer out loud. Everyone laughed. I felt something cold curl in my stomach. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice cracked. "Because you always say I'm the smartest girl you know." And I didn't feel smart. The light turned green, but I didn't hit the gas right away. That sentence, "I didn't feel smart," broke something in me. Not because she'd struggled, but because she'd been made to believe struggling meant failing. And that man, had taken the one thing Lila carried like armor and shattered it in front of a classroom. When we got home, I told her to go get ready for bed, even though it was barely 7. She didn't argue. I sat in the living room for 2 hours after that. No TV. No phone. Just me, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, and a thought that kept digging deeper. This wasn't just a bad teacher. This was something else. I pulled out my laptop, found the school's parent portal, and dug into Yarrow's profile. 15 years in the district. 2 awards. 0 complaints. On paper, he looked like a golden boy. But paper doesn't feel shame. Doesn't measure cruelty. I scrolled deeper. Parent reviews, local forums, even Reddit. That's where I found something. A post from 3 years ago. Anyone else have issues with Mr. Yarrow at Westside Middle? My kid says he singles out students who ask too many questions. Accused my daughter of copying when she finished a test early. Wouldn't explain why. 2 replies. Same here. He made my son stay after class every day for a week for attitude. My son has an IEP. Good luck getting the school to care. He's protected. They love his test scores. My hand hovered over the mouse. That feeling in my gut. It wasn't anger. It was recognition. This man wasn't careless. He was calculated. He'd made a habit out of humiliation, and the system had let him. Not this time. I closed the laptop and stood up. If the school wasn't going to protect Lila, I would. Even if it meant tearing down everything around him brick by brick. The next morning, I sent Lila off to school like it was any other day. Oatmeal, a kiss on the forehead, and a reminder that her hoodie was still in the dryer. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Not yet. I waited until I knew she was in first period before I started making calls. The school secretary was polite, robotic. Mr. Yarrow's schedule is fully booked today. I can forward you to the vice principal. No need, I said. This isn't a scheduling issue. I didn't bother trying to go through the system. I knew how that story ends, emails into black holes, we'll look into it voicemails, polite apologies with no weight behind them. So I went to someone who owed me a favor. A woman named Claire Breton. Investigative journalist. Local. Smart. Fearless. We'd met 5 years ago, back when I helped her brother get clean. I was a counselor at the time. Group therapy. Long nights. Worse mornings. But he pulled through, and Claire never forgot it. She picked up on the second ring. Caleb. I've got a story. But you're going to think it's too small. Try me. So I told her. About the reports. About Lila. About the posts buried in forums that no one had followed up on. About the teacher whose reputation sparkled while kids walked home in tears. She was quiet for a beat. Then, I'll meet you in an hour. We sat at a coffee shop a few blocks from the school. I had a folder in my hands, copies of the incident reports, screenshots of the forum posts, even a photo Lila had drawn last night that wrecked me. It was of her, sitting alone in a classroom. A big X over her head. Everyone else laughing. Claire flipped through the pages, expression unreadable. You think this guy targets certain kids? I think he gets off on power. And I think the school's been turning a blind eye because he inflates their scores. She leaned back. I've done 3 exposés on local politics, 2 on housing discrimination, and 1 on a police cover-up. You think this teacher's your villain? I looked her dead in the eye. I don't think he's a villain. I think he's practiced. That got her. Claire agreed to dig. Quietly. No publishing, not yet. Just research. I gave her the names from the forum posts. She gave me a name too, a woman who used to work at Westside Middle as a special ed coordinator. Retired early. No explanation. I called her that night. Left a voicemail. Told her I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I just wanted to protect my kid. She called back 20 minutes later. I remember Yarrow, she said. And you're right to be worried. Her voice sounded tired. Not scared. Resigned. He hides behind numbers. When kids speak up, he frames it as behavioral issues. He's been doing it for years. I brought it to the principal once, She told me to focus on my department and stop making waves. Why didn't you go public? A pause. Because the kids he targets, they're the quiet ones. The gifted ones. The ones without loud parents. And by the time they say something, the damage is already done. I didn't sleep that night. Because it wasn't just Lila. It was a pattern. And patterns leave trails. I wasn't going to sit quietly and wait for another report to show up in my mailbox. I was going to take the first swing. And I was going to make it count. I didn't go to work the next day. I called in sick. Not because because I knew if I sat in that office, pretending to care about spreadsheets and sales targets while my daughter's future was being chipped away one humiliation at a time, I'd explode. So I opened a new document on my laptop and titled it, The Yarrow Pattern. It wasn't for a blog. Or a news article. Not yet. It was for evidence. I started with Lila's timeline. First incident, October 3rd. She came home quiet. I hadn't thought much of it. Then October 6th. Her math test. The one she aced, until he accused her of cheating. That night, she'd asked if it was okay to be too smart. I thought she was joking. By the 11th, her drawings had gotten darker. Sad faces. Heavy lines. Red XS. And then the reports started coming. I documented everything. Dates, comments, behavior shifts. Then I cross-referenced with school calendar events. I found a pattern I wasn't expecting. He only reported Lila when she corrected him publicly. The first time, she challenged him on a PEMDAS order during a group review. The second, a decimal error on a quiz. And the third, she asked why the substitute's grading rubric was different from his. I froze. This wasn't about disruption. This was about control. That afternoon, Claire called. She sounded breathless. I found 5 parents who are willing to talk. 4 of them had their kids pulled from Yarrow's class mid-semester. 1 transferred schools entirely. Why didn't they say anything? They did, she said. They just weren't listened to. She emailed me a scanned letter from one of the parents to the school board. Dated last year. A full-page account of their son being singled out, publicly embarrassed, and falsely accused of cheating. The response? A generic thank you and a reminder that the district prides itself on excellence and upholding teacher integrity. No follow-up. No meeting. Nothing. I was staring at the same wall Lila had been running into for weeks. I just hadn't known it yet. That night, I got a call from the retired coordinator again. You're getting close, she said. But be careful. The district protects its own. Yarrow's students test well. That's all they care about. Even if it comes at the cost of their mental health. She sighed. Especially if no one tracks that metric. I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time. I could feel the heat rising behind my eyes, but I didn't let it go. Not yet. I didn't need rage. I needed precision. So I printed everything. Laid it all out on my kitchen floor like a caseboard from a detective show. Photos. Emails. Screenshots. Post-its with names and timelines. And right in the center of it all, Yarrow's staff profile, smiling like he hadn't shattered a single thing in his life. He thought no one was watching. He was wrong. Because I wasn't just watching now. I was documenting. Organizing. Building. And soon, I was going to walk right through that school's front doors, drop this folder on the principal's desk, and make sure they had nowhere left to hide. I didn't sleep. Again. By morning, I had the folder packed, labeled, color-coded, sectioned. I even rehearsed what I was going to say. Not angry. Not desperate. Just undeniable. I wore a blazer I hadn't touched in a year. Not for them. For Lila. Because I wanted them to look me in the eye and see a father who didn't rattle easy. One who came prepared. One they couldn't gaslight into silence. I checked Lila's backpack twice before dropping her off. She seemed lighter that morning, like maybe the storm clouds were starting to lift. She kissed me on the cheek before walking into the building. I almost cried right there in the car. But I had work to do. I walked into Westside Middle's front office at 9:03 a.m. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with a smile just a little too fixed, greeted me with that tone all school offices have, cheerful enough to hide the policies, cold enough to make sure you knew where the line was. "I'm here to speak with Principal Tinsley," I said. She glanced at the screen. "Do you have an appointment?" "No. But I have documentation." I held up the folder. "And I believe it qualifies as urgent." Her smile thinned. "She's in a meeting. I can wait." I sat in the lobby for 41 minutes. Kids passed through. Teachers nodded politely. One aide offered me a cup of coffee. I declined. My hands were already shaking. Finally, a door opened. Principal Tinsley stepped out. Late 40s, crisp navy dress, hair pulled back tight. She moved with the confidence of someone used to never being challenged. Her eyes flicked to the receptionist, who gestured subtly toward me. She walked over. "Mr. Huxley, was it?" "Yes." "I'd like to talk to you about Mr. Yarrow." Her smile never quite reached her eyes. "Now's not the best time. Could you email me and we'll find a moment next week?" I didn't move. I've already waited a week. 3, actually. Since the first report was filed against my daughter. She nodded slowly, as if humoring a child. "I assure you, every concern is taken seriously." I held up the folder. "This is more than a concern." Something shifted in her expression. A calculation. She opened her office door halfway. 5 minutes. That's all I needed. I stepped inside and laid the folder on her desk like a lawyer presenting evidence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just walked her through it. Dates, patterns, comparisons. The anonymous posts. The quiet complaints. The academic retaliation masked as discipline. Her jaw clenched by page 6. "Where did you get all this?" "Parents. Forums. Former staff. I also spoke to a reporter." That got her attention. Her voice dropped. "Mr. Huxley, if you're threatening this institution..." "I'm protecting my daughter." A beat of silence. She sat down, palms flat on the desk. "I'll need time to review this." "You'll need to remove Yarrow from the classroom until you do." She blinked. "That's not how we operate." "Then I'll go to the school board. The press. I'll send this entire packet to every parent in the district and let them decide if you still deserve their trust." She studied me, probably trying to decide if I was bluffing. I wasn't. When she finally spoke again, her voice was low. Careful. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention." That was it. No apology. No promise. Just a corporate script wearing a human face. I left the office without another word. But as I passed the front desk, I noticed something. Her assistant was watching me. Not cold. Not curious. Grateful. She waited until the principal was back inside before leaning over the counter and whispering, "You're not the first parent to try." I looked at her. "But," she added, "you might be the first one they actually listen to." I walked out of that building with something I hadn't had in days. Leverage. And I planned to use every last ounce of it. I expected silence. I expected them to drag their feet, call a committee, form a task force, whatever bureaucratic ritual they use to bury things like this. But that's not what happened. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Huxley, this is Alicia Benton, Assistant Superintendent for the district. I understand you had a meeting yesterday regarding a concern with a faculty member." That told me 2 things. The principal had escalated it. She hadn't done it voluntarily. "Yes," I said. "I left a full report." She cleared her throat. "I'd like to meet with you in person. Today, if possible." "Where?" "My office. Noon. 12 sharp." I walked into the district building with a copy of the folder and a portable voice recorder in my jacket pocket, just in case. The lobby was quiet. Wood paneling. The kind of place that's designed to make you feel small. But I wasn't feeling small anymore. Benton was mid-40s. Crisp blouse. The calm professionalism of someone who knew exactly how close the storm was and wanted to stay ahead of it. She didn't offer coffee. No chit-chat. Just motioned for me to sit. I read your report. I nodded. And there's enough in it to warrant a formal inquiry. I stayed quiet. Let the silence work for me. She continued. Yarrow will be placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. My breath caught, but I didn't show it. For how long? As long as it takes. We've assigned a substitute for the remainder of the semester. I also want you to know we're reopening prior complaints related to his classroom behavior. And Lila? She looked up. She'll be monitored. We've instructed the school counselor to check in with her twice a week. And she'll have the option to transfer to another homeroom if you'd prefer. I shook my head. No. She stays. She didn't do anything wrong. Benton gave the slightest smile. Not warm, but real. Understood. I stood. I appreciate the action. But you should know, I'm not dropping this until the policy changes. Not just the person. She nodded. We're aware. And frankly, it's overdue. That afternoon, I picked Lila up myself. She walked out of the building slower than usual, head tilted, scanning the lot like she was still waiting for something to go wrong. When she saw me, she ran. I knelt and caught her in my arms. She buried her face in my shoulder. They said he's gone, she whispered. Is that true? Yeah, I said. It's true. She didn't say anything for a while. Just held on like she finally believed I wouldn't let her fall. And I didn't. I wouldn't. Not now. Not ever. By the end of the week, the story broke. Not from me. From Claire. She called the night before it published. It's going live tomorrow at 6 a.m. Just a heads up, your name's not in it. But Yarrow's is. I read the article twice before sunrise. Then again while Lila slept in. It wasn't just a hit piece. It was a blueprint. A documented timeline. Claire had pulled quotes from parents I'd never even spoken to. Found archived emails. Even a redacted complaint from a school psychologist who left the district 2 years ago, citing irreconcilable ethics issues. The headline was brutal in the best way. The classroom bully, how a decorated math teacher silenced smart kids for a decade and got away with it. By noon, the district had issued a statement. They called it troubling. Said they were launching a full-scale investigation. Claimed they were reviewing internal systems for accountability. Translation: they were trying not to drown. But the parents, they weren't waiting. My inbox filled up with messages from strangers. Some were from moms and dads who had stayed silent too long. Others were from teachers, quiet ones, who had seen what Yarrow did and didn't know how to speak up. One woman wrote, "He made my daughter cry 3 days a week for half a semester. I pulled her out and homeschooled her. Thank you for making sure no one else has to do that." Another, "I used to work at Westside. We weren't allowed to question him. Now maybe someone finally will." I wasn't used to being thanked for things like this. I wasn't used to being heard. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Principal Tinsley. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was exactly what I expected, carefully worded, hollow in all the wrong places. "We take these matters seriously. We're committed to student safety. We'd like to invite you to join a parent advisory committee moving forward." I didn't call her back. I didn't need to. That night, Lila sat at the kitchen table, working through her geometry packet. She looked up after solving a problem and smiled, really smiled, for the first time in weeks. "Mr. Becker's nice," she said. "He makes bad jokes and lets us use colored pens." I nodded. "Sounds like a monster." She giggled, then turned serious. "Did you fix it, Daddy?" I paused, then said what I truly believed. "I made it loud enough they can't ignore it anymore." She tilted her head. "Will they still try?" "Probably," I said. "But next time, they'll know someone's watching." She nodded and went back to her homework. That night, I stood in the doorway of her room after she fell asleep. She looked peaceful again. Like a kid. Not a case file. And I realized something. Sometimes revenge doesn't look like shouting. Or suing. Or burning it all down. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's just refusing to be erased. 3 weeks passed. No lawsuits. No apologies. No parades. Just life, continuing. The world didn't stop because one man got pulled out of a classroom. But for one little girl, it changed everything. And that was enough for me. Lila came home with a math test, 98%, a star sticker, and a smile wide enough to light up the whole living room. Mr. Becker said I explained one of the answers better than the book does. I grinned. Maybe you should be teaching the class. She shrugged, but I caught the blush in her cheeks. That quiet pride. The kind of confidence that had been taken from her and clawed back, piece by piece. The district tried to do damage control. They held a parent forum, promised new reporting tools, and rotated in a few fresh faces from the board office. But I'd seen how systems protect themselves. I knew the theater when I saw it. So I kept watching. Claire kept writing. And more parents kept speaking up. What started as one folder on my kitchen table turned into a ripple I don't think they expected, because once you show people the cracks, they stop pretending the walls are solid. Lila asked one night if I ever thought about suing the school. I told her the truth. Yeah, I did. But sometimes the win isn't in court. Sometimes it's in not letting them break you. She nodded slowly, like she understood more than a 12-year-old should. That weekend, we drove to the edge of Lake Monona. Just the two of us. She brought a sketch pad. I brought sandwiches. We sat in the grass while the sun dipped behind the trees and the water turned gold. After a while, she said, I don't think I'm scared of him anymore. I looked at her. You shouldn't be. She hesitated. Do you think I was brave? I smiled. Braver than most adults I know. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and we watched the lake ripple in the wind. There was no big music swelling. No cinematic finale. Just peace. Stillness. The after of something hard finally passed through. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe. Because this wasn't the story of a teacher. It was the story of a girl who kept showing up anyway. Of a father who refused to sit down. Of what happens when silence ends, and truth finally gets a seat at the table.